Hello, my name is Steven Loera, and the theme for week 3 is instructional design. So, instructional design is experiences which make acquisition of knowledge and skill more efficient, effective, and an overall more appealing experience. To me, this says that when creating or engaging in a lesson, we have to figure out ways to hit our students' different learning modalities, engage them, find ways to connect to the students in order to create a more engaging lesson plan. And I think that by doing so, while initially it may be an extrinsic motivator, hopefully through these type of lessons there is some sort of intrinsic motivating factor that is triggered. So just to go over ADDIE, which I found most intriguing and most straightforward. One is the analysis part, is to understand the audience, and I'll speak about it later, but I know that this is something that I'm going to need to work on with my students. I've created index cards or inventory cards, but I haven't taken the time to really look at them. So up to now, just as a point of reflection on my own part, this is something where I would need to take a step back and go back and look at these. But once you've understood your students, who your audience is, it's to design some sort of content or lesson plan that is going to be most effective in teaching students. Once you've designed it, you develop it by creating the worksheets necessary or the materials and equipment necessary in class. Then the fourth step is the implementation of such lesson. And finally, the last step is the evaluation. So you've collected your artifacts, your evidence, and you've ensured that you've created a engaging and effective lesson plan. I read an article by Amoral Shibli and partners called Designing a Blended Course Using ADDIE to Guide Instructional Design. And essentially the issue they were having was their online lessons were not online courses were not as engaging, and their scores were not as high as their face-to-face interaction or face-to-face classrooms. So they defined hybrid learning as a thoughtful fusion of face-to-face and online learning. In the past, the article states the instructor would speak, create some type of presentation with little to no interaction on behalf of the student. The goal, according to the authors, was to make students more engaged in online courses, offer pathways through which students were able to interact with the content on a more personal level. And this reminded me of the experiential learning theory that states that students best learn through their own experiences. The analysis that the authors came up with was that they had to create goals and ID and focus on what students needed the most help with. Once they did that, they realized and figured that they'd need to help students with critical thinking, teamwork, and then a logical analysis. This reminded me of the social and contextual learning theory because it really advocates for a team environment. Moving forward, they created a class guide to help students, and they implemented this with 15 sections and 65 students, so it was a large sample. When it came time to the evaluation, there was a questionnaire portion asking for student input, and in their input, students responded well to this new type of learning environment. They were most pleased with the fact that they were able to engage the content versus simply taking notes and taking a test. And overall, average scores were increased in the class as opposed to previous online environments and face-to-face interactions. So this hybrid system best worked after the ADDIE guide was implemented and followed. So connections to me, like I mentioned, analysis, look at student inventory cards to better understand my demographic. I'm a month and a half into my teaching, and while I feel I've gotten to know my students on a more intimate and personal level, we've made connections. I've spoken to family members. I haven't taken the time really, primarily because I'm overwhelmed with being a new teacher and going through induction and BITSA, and that I need to make time, find time on the weekend or something to go through these inventory cards and find out how these students best learn. I can make assumptions based on lessons I've given already, but I think going to the source, I asked them the question, how do you best learn? I think I should go back and really even set up some type of graph or an organizer to find out where the clumps of students are to help them. And then create those lessons based on student interest and learning methods. Finally, the reference page I use, like I said, the title was Design a Blended Course using ADDIE to guide instructional design. I have the website listed and the authors. Thank you so much, everybody.